It's 9 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, Labour performed strongly at the local elections, but if Sunak stays the course, fixes the economy and stops the boats, it's all to play for in a year's time. My verdict on the local elections. In my take at 10, Prince Harry's blink and you'll miss it appearance at the coronation was another slap in the face to his father and the country. I'll be dealing with the world's least happy millionaire in no uncertain terms, and you won't want to miss it. My Mark Meets guest is the author of a shocking new book about the marriage between Hollywood stars Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. It's an extraordinary soap opera, and you won't believe what they got up to. So, big guests, big stories, and big opinions. My verdict on those local elections, but first, the headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Mark, thank you. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The newly crowned King and Queen have said they're profoundly grateful for all the support they've received this weekend. 20,000 people have filled Windsor Castle to join the King and Queen for the coronation concert. Charles, Camilla and the Prince and Princess of Wales and their 3 children waved to the crowds from the top balcony, with Prince William set to make a speech later on stage. The Prime Minister and his wife, Akshata Murthy, are also guests of honour. Performers include Take That, Katy Perry and Lionel Richie, as well as special appearances from Tom Cruise, Dame Joan Collins and Sir Tom Jones. Ahead of the show, host Hugh Bonneville said it's going to be a great night.
There are so many standout moments from what I've seen. There's a beautiful poem composed especially for the event. There's a remarkable finale, both visually and orally, and some astonishing pop performances along the way, and as well as classical performances from Andrea Bocelli and Sabrina Terfel. So I think there really is something for everyone tonight. It's going to be magical.
Tens of thousands of street parties have been held across the UK to continue the celebrations. The annual event run by Eden Project Communities said 67,000 big lunch events were planned for today. The royal family were out in force to show their thanks. Sisters Princess Beatrice and Eugenie were at an event in Buckinghamshire, and the Duke of Edinburgh, Edward, and his wife Sophie stopped by a lunch in Surrey. Well-wishers said the parties brought out the best of British.
It's lovely to see all the people and the balloons out and everything. Yeah, excellent.
It doesn't happen often enough to get people to get together, and they should. Like a day like this, great.
It's a very nice, creative thing to bring us all together to celebrate this, because it's a one-in-a-lifetime thing. I don't think I'm going to experience it again.
We think it's wonderful. There's so many people have come to support it, and we've even got, nice fine weather after all the rain.
And what did you make of the coronation?
We loved it. We loved every minute of it, especially seeing little Louis singing the national anthem all the way through.
Yeah, I was impressed, yeah. It makes you proud to be British, doesn't it?
The First Lady of the US, Jill Biden, was one of the special guests hosted at a big lunch by the Prime Minister and his wife outside Downing Street earlier. Recipients of the Points of Light Award, which has been given to ordinary people doing extraordinary things for their community, were also there, as well as some Ukrainian refugees and their hosts. The government has defended the police response to protests ahead of the coronation after complaints that officers went too far. 52 people were arrested, including from the anti-monarchy group Republic and Just Stop Oil. Amnesty International's policing expert says the Metropolitan Police may have misused new powers granted by the Public Order Bill, but the force insists they acted in line with legislation. And the Culture Secretary, Lucy Fraser, said the new powers are there to be used. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark.
Isn't Bethany the best? She's back in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, Labour performed strongly at the local elections, but if Sunak stays the course, fixes the economy and stops the boats, it's all to play for in a year's time. My first on-air response to the local election results. In my take at 10, Prince Harry's blink and you'll miss it appearance at the coronation was another slap in the face to his father and the country. I'll be dealing with the world's least happy millionaire in no uncertain terms, and you won't want to miss it. That's after 10. In the big story, I'll be joined by top royal journalist Charlie Ray, and I'll be asking, can King Charles make Britain great again? My Mark Meets guest is the author of a shocking new book about the marriage between Hollywood stars Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. It's an extraordinary soap opera, and you will not believe what they got up to. Tonight's newsmaker is politics legend Anne Widdecombe. I'll be asking Anne whether the police were too hard on royal protesters. Are the Tories really sunk? And Anne will tell us her highlights from yesterday's coronation. That's right, Anne Widdecombe looking back at what has been a glorious 24 hours. Mark Dolan tonight is the home of the papers with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30 with three top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, Emma Burnell, Neil Fox and Lynn May. Also tonight, I'll be asking the pundits, was the coronation balcony too white? That's a quote from a famous actress who said she wasn't happy with the lineup on the balcony. And after his antics yesterday, should Prince Louis be sent to the Tower? We've also got your emails, especially the spicy ones, mark@gbnews.uk. This show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Couple of other bits and bobs to tell you about, by the way. A legendary royal photographer will join us on the show. This is the guy that took the first ever photo of Charles, Diana and William. He's with us later. And tonight's show deserves a dedication to each and every one of you who watch the programme, who watch the channel, who listen, who catch up online. We are nothing without you. And if you're enjoying the programme, if you're enjoying the show, then tell your friends, tell your family. Let's change the world together. I've got to be honest, I can't go anywhere without being stopped by people saying they love the channel, they love the show, including this week, a lady whose nickname is the Duchess. And she goes to my local Iceland and we talk for half an hour about how much she loves the channel. So tonight's show is dedicated to all of you, especially the Duchess. It's time now for my big opinion. The Labour Party's great selling point is that they're not the Tory party, and this is understandable after several years of chaos at number 10 and a conveyor belt of prime ministers. The Tories are now a hated and toxic brand, including among many of their own supporters, and they've only brought it on themselves. But whilst the Tories suffered a momentous collapse in the May elections, and although the opposition made numerous headline-grabbing gains, their overall share didn't tick up significantly. May the 4th was spectacularly bad for the Tories, yes, but not spectacularly good for Labour. And with this current administration having at least a year to turn the ship around, it's all to play for. Given the state of the economy and the fact that millions of Brits are struggling to put food on the table, fill their cars with petrol and get a GP appointment, it's astonishing that Keir Starmer isn't enjoying a Tony Blair-style lead at the moment. But there's a reason for that. He's not Tony Blair. This pompous North London lawyer who typifies everything about the woke metropolitan Brexit-hating elite is simply not loved by the British public. Have you ever met a Keir Starmer fan? Where are these groupies, these fanatical supporters who every other game-changing prime minister, including Thatcher and Blair, had at their disposal? The only momentum that Keir Starmer's got is that group of hard-left ideologues breathing down his throat, momentum themselves. No one really likes Keir Starmer. At best, it's meh, and at worst, it's bleh. Why? Well, because in my view, he's not authentic. He's not real, he's not straight. The pledges he makes are about as valuable as shares in Silicon Valley Bank. He wants Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister, then he chucks him out of the party. He wants a second referendum on Brexit, effectively trying to reverse the decision. Now he reckons Brexit is a great idea. The team under him, including the likes of Emily Thornberry, laugh and sneer at the patriotic flags of the English people. But now he is Mr. Patriotic himself. He indulges in the fantasy that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man, but then fudges it by saying 99% of women don't have a penis. A typical fence-sitting position that will please no one. He wants to nationalise industries, then he doesn't. He wants to scrap tuition fees, then he doesn't. And let's not forget his performance during the pandemic, when he went around pretending to be Prime Minister, holding random press conferences, I'm assuming from his bedroom, calling for extra emergency lockdowns. And he called Freedom Day in July 2021 reckless. Well, that aged well, didn't it? Starmer seems to have a great talent for being on the wrong side of every argument, because the views that he and his mates in Islington have do not represent the views of millions of ordinary Brits like you and me. It's not a fashionable view, but in our increasingly presidential system, when it's a straight choice between Prime Minister Starmer and Prime Minister Sunak, I think many will hold their nose and back Sunak, with no great enthusiasm, but I think they will. Why? Well, Sunak, for all of his sins, hasn't flip-flopped or blown with the wind. He's been pretty consistent, including by raising taxes, which he said he would do, and which has been very unpopular within his own party. The politician you can trust is the one who's willing to be unpopular. Sunak has stabilised the economy, settling the nerves of the international bond markets, upon whose largesse we are now so reliant. And he has clearly identified his 5 big goals. He hasn't deleted them, he hasn't changed them, rewritten them, he hasn't scrapped them. Fix the NHS, halve inflation, tackle the debt, get the economy growing and stop the boats. What's not to like? Whereas, who knows what Starmer really thinks or what he wants to do? Can we hope that if he wins, he will be a moderate centre-left figure like Tony Blair, who I voted for 3 times? Well, given the fact that he's flanked by the likes of Angela Rayner and a hardcore rump of Corbynite backbenchers, I wouldn't be so sure. I think the local election results proved that Keir Starmer cannot win an overall majority, which means he would be reliant on the support of Humza Yousaf's terrifyingly woke SNP and hardcore socialist backbenchers, the likes of John McDonnell, Richard Bergen and Diane Abbott. They would be in the driving seat, and they would shift the party further to the left of Karl Marx. With the right leader, Labour achieve a healthy majority in a year's time. But they don't have the right leader. They've got Keir Starmer. And with him, the best they can hope for is Labour as the biggest party in a hung parliament, at which point Britain will be hung out to dry. Be careful what you wish for. So what's your reaction to my big opinion? Mark at GBnews.uk. Labour are streets ahead in the polls. It seems that the majority of those out there, the voting public, think it's time for a Labour government. What's your view? Mark at GBnews.uk. Reacting to my big opinion, my top pundits tonight, journalist and political consultant Emma Burnell, DJ and broadcaster Neil Fox, and political and social commentator Lynn May. Lynn, great to have you back on the show. Your reaction to Thursday's local election results, I think it demonstrates that Labour cannot form an overall majority at the next election.
Well, I hope not, personally. But at the same time, I'm glad that essentially they got a kicking in terms of the Conservatives. I don't think that many of the people that voted for local elections for Labour, when it comes to the general election, I don't think that they're actually going to vote for Labour, but I think they're sending out a strong message. They're sick to death of the Conservative Party not listening to the electorate. Rishi Sunak is unelected. However, he is really good in terms of stability, but I still don't think the Conservatives are listening to the electorate. OK, Neil Fox.
Yeah, I think, look, local elections, I don't know what the turnout is. It's never very high. And I think people vote very differently in local elections. 30%. I mean, it's pathetic, really, isn't it? But people, I think, vote very differently in local elections than they do in a general election. I think, to a certain extent, a local election doesn't almost have that much impact on your life, but the general election certainly can. And I think, when you, in your big opinion, I totally agreed and was nodding along when you said, you know, Labour's strongest point at the moment is they're just not the Tories. And I think, sadly, for too long, that has now been the case. I mean, the Tories have just handed them, in a way, just so many gifts and opportunities by cocking up so much over the last few years, and just non-stop change of government, of Prime Minister, of this, sackings, everything that's happened.
Scandal, sleaze.
I mean, it has just been endless, and in a way, a gift that keeps on giving to the Labour Party. But the one thing they haven't really done yet is told us what they would do and how they would change things. And actually, I don't think put forward, I think in a way many of us are wishing they would put forward some candidates that you think, these people, a bit like when Blair did, oh my God, these people look like they know what they're going to do and they have some ideas. I don't think yet we've got that. We've just got the fact they're not the Tories.
Well, there you go. And not being the Tories isn't enough for Labour, is it, Emma?
It's not enough, but it's a blooming good start, frankly, given who the Tories are and the fact that we're quite uniform despite our quite differing political opinions on that. I think that tells you a big story. I mean, no, the local elections are not a complete guide to what's going to happen. But I do think that underlying some of what happened on Thursday and the results that we saw seeping out on Friday actually shows quite an important story about the differences between now and, say, the same time these elections happened in 2019 under Theresa May. Already a very bad performance for the Conservatives. They were doing a big expectation management game, saying, hey, we could lose 1,000 seats. And everyone was saying, no, they're only saying that's the top end of what they could lose. They lost well over 1,000 when it came to it. But more interestingly, because people do vote slightly differently in local elections than they do in general elections, is the fact that there isn't a big party. There isn't a Reform. There isn't a UKIP. There isn't one of those protest parties to the Tories' right. So the message that the electorate was sending in quite a lot of places, both in the red wall, where they voted Labour, and in the blue wall, where they were going to the Lib Dems and the Greens, was we will vote for the candidate that will get the Tories out. Now, I agree that Labour hasn't got as clear a message as you would want, but I also think that oppositions rarely do at this point in an electoral cycle. I literally wrote my whole newsletter about how frustrating this point is.
Blair didn't tell us much about what he was going to do. The trick is to be as grey and anonymous as possible.
What they need to do is have a sort of vision for the future. This is what it will look like in 5 years' time, and then they do the building blocks of how to get there once you've got that in place. And they do have some policy, but they've got this dreadful tendency to announce policy once and think we've all heard it. And that's just not how politics or political communication works. So I do think there's definite things Labour can do. I think the difference between where Labour are, where Keir Starmer is, and where Rishi Sunak is that I think Labour's got much more opportunity to do that. Rishi Sunak he's set himself these 5 pledges. The inflation one's going badly already. And also, I think the problem is most voters, they hear we will get inflation down. What they think that means is we will get prices down. And actually what it means is prices will rise slightly slower.
Yeah, those prices
I don't think that's because of I don't think that's down to the Conservatives.
That's the promise he's made. So he's set that rod for his own back.
But isn't it nice to have a Prime Minister that's got things that he wants to be judged by? It's hard to know what to judge Starmer by.
It can't happen overnight. If we look at the Fed, they've just increased their interest rates because of inflation. And if we look at, we probably would do the same, but it's at a peak now. It will start to come down. And I think oftentimes when we hear politicians say things, we expect it to happen literally within 48 hours, and that's just not going to be the case.
I don't disagree with you, but what I'm saying is if they are claiming we will halve inflation, we may well get to a point by the next election where that is starting to happen.
Yeah.
But whether that happens in those headline figures and whether that's followed up when I go to the supermarket and buy bread and butter, that is the problem.
Well,
my issue with Labour, though, is that you said it earlier, they're very good at criticising every single thing the Conservative government says.
It's not hard.
But where is the, OK, I'm going to criticise you, but here's our solution? We rarely hear that when it comes to housing, when it comes to inflation, when it comes to gender, when it comes to all these
illegal immigration.
Immigration, they literally, in the House of Commons, they hammered the Conservative Party. And I was like, yeah, they're going to give us an alternative. There was none.
No, and you're absolutely right. And this is what I wrote my whole newsletter on this week. It's an awful, awful time in politics, this period, 18 months out from an election, because you are absolutely in limbo. There's so much work going on behind the scenes to nail down policy properly, to get it to a point where when you present it to the public, you can be absolutely sure you've got all the answers. And that's hard to do, not least because what you haven't got is the civil service. You do all of that work.
I think what I'm hearing from you and your fascinating newsletter, which we should feature on the show, is that all of the goodies will be unveiled in a year's time.
And that's what... You have to sit tight, and that's what you have to do.
And I'll grant you that. And
I
will give you that Labour are ahead in the polls and that Starmer has transformed the fortunes of his party and he's likely to be our next Prime Minister. But one simple question before we go, and the clock's against us, which is, have you ever met a Keir Starmer fan?
No, but I think that's his superpower. That was another thing I wrote.
That spin, go on.
No, genuinely.
How can that be a good thing?
I know,
really?
right?
Seriously.
I'll tell you why. Because I've been a Labour Party member since I was 15. I'm weird. And I've watched them come and go, the leaders, and I've watched them go absolutely up on their pedestal. Jeremy Corbyn or Tony.
Please don't lose me any viewers.
Both sides of this. And actually, the people who have that kind of adulation...
Steady Eddie.
Really just... it goes to their heads and they go completely bonkers. But B, actually, it just gives you a bigger pedestal to fall off.
Well, wait a minute. Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, they both had fans, they both had momentum.
They did, but I do think we're in a different time now, and genuinely, both of those have also had really long tails that have damaged the parties in different ways.
I don't know who likes Keir. The left don't like Keir, the right don't like Keir, the centre's bored of Keir.
All right, well, look, do you like Keir? Neil, I'm going to come to you in just a moment because we've just got a quick break, but what do you think? Are you a fan of Keir Starmer? Do you think that if it's a choice between Sunak and Starmer, Starmer edges it? Let me know where you're at with this. Mark at GBNews.uk. Very excited about my next guest. We've got the former royal correspondent of the Sun newspaper, Charlie Ray, total legend of journalism. And I'll be asking, can King Charles make Britain great again? That's next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to my big opinion. They're coming in thick and fast. Alison, no, I don't like Keir Starmer. I would not vote for him. Richard says, in terms of your big opinion, with Sunak, you get precise answers and clear plans of action that you can measure him by and hold him to. With Starmer, you get waffle and fudge and a giant word salad in response to every question. Sunak is a shoo-in for next PM, whatever the polls suggest, says Richard, sticking his neck out there. Paul says, I'm backing Starmer all the way. Graham, hi Mark, you're right about the state of Starmer and the Labour Party, although I think the Prime Minister needs to invert his to-do list and make stopping the boats his #1 priority. If we can't protect our borders, then all else becomes insignificant. Hi Mark, says Darryl, Labour couldn't organise a piss-up in a brewery. They may have made a few gains in local authorities, but are totally lost when it comes to the governance of our country. Labour is the next government? No, 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 says Janice. Look, I'm having trouble drumming up support for Keir Starmer. Just one lonely email. So if you're going to back Keir and tell me about his strengths, drop me a line, mark@gbnews.uk. Many would argue he couldn't possibly do a worse job than this current shower. Now, we got sent so many of your amazing Coronation Day celebration pictures yesterday. We didn't have time for all of them, so here are a few more before we speak to our top royal expert. Here's Joe's sons on Coronation Saturday. Fine boys, waving the flag. Well done, lads. We've got the stunning Rhonda. She says, I spent a wonderful Coronation Day at home with my family. I did wear my tiara for the occasion. So proud of our wonderful royal family. What an amazing day. Well, aren't you gorgeous indeed, Rhonda? We love that photo. I've got the most gorgeous viewers, haven't I? Let's be honest. Lee says, me and my daughter Maisie have been watching GB News all day. Please give us a shout out, especially Kinsey. We love her. Well, look, thank you for that. And thank you for watching Mark Dolan tonight. I was wearing my Dickie bow last night. Very exciting. How about that? Well, look, we'll get to more of your wonderful Coronation Day pictures shortly, but it's time now for the big story. And there's only one story in town, the coronation. But as we reflect on what has been a magical weekend, it's time to look to the future and ask a simple question. Can King Charles make Britain great again? To answer this, I'm delighted to welcome the doyen of British journalism and a man who covered the royal beat at the Sun newspaper for many years, breaking some of their biggest royal stories, Charles Ray. Hi, Charlie.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
A new king is a new opportunity for the country. Can Charles make Britain great again?
Well, no, he can't on his own. There's only so much he can do. I mean, there are other problems we've got in this country, which your panel have been discussing already, and that's got to be sorted out politically. He can have an input.
Now, we've just lost the line to Charlie for the moment, but you might wonder why I've posed this question. Can Charles make Britain great again? Well, I think the monarch is massively pivotal, a huge opportunity. Somebody of Charles's status, his international recognition, his profile, can definitely represent the country abroad. Let me give you a perfect example of what I'm thinking about. Charles could fly to Washington, to the United States, stay at the White House and win hearts and minds and convince the president, once he's not having a nap, that we can actually have a trade deal with the United States. So I think that this could equate to significant policy goals if we deploy the king in the way that I think potentially we could. Any luck with Charlie's line? Because otherwise I'll get to more of your emails. Charlie's back. He's back in the house. Charlie, you've just been censored there. I'm sorry about that. I just mentioned in that brief intermission that King Charles is one of the best-known figures in the world, isn't he? An internationally recognised person. And therefore, he brings with him significant soft diplomatic power.
Yes, he does. And as I was saying earlier on, he can help to make Britain again, but a big part of it has got to be done through the government. Whoever is the government, their policies have got to help make Britain great again. And I've often wanted to be a fly on the wall on the Tuesday meetings between the monarch and the Prime Minister, because that is where the monarch can actually have an input into things that are going on in the country. Let's not dilly-dally about it. This is still a great country. We've got problems, but it's still a great country. And you know, as we saw yesterday with the coronation, hundreds of thousands of people jammed the Mall to watch that coronation. Millions of people around the world watch the coronation, and we've got a concert going on tonight at Windsor Castle. I've seen part of it. It looks great. There's 25,000 people there already. But tomorrow, you know, I know it's a bank holiday, we'll be waking up tomorrow and he will get started again. And the way he does that, the way the royal family will do that, is by doing what they've been doing all along. Promoting various charities, promoting those who are out of work and trying to help them get back into work. It's another way of doing that. And I think that Charles is, I don't want to be morbid about this, but let's be honest, Mark, he's only got about 20, 25 years of his reign to go. It's not like his mother. She had 70 years and she didn't do at all badly. He's got big shoes to fill, but he has not got the same amount of time that his mother had. She didn't sort out the problems that we have in this country. I'm not suggesting that she could do, but there are certain things he can do in a much shorter time. And I think he'll be a great king. And I think Camilla will be a great queen.
Most certainly. It's a moment in our history, isn't it? Post-Elizabeth, post-pandemic, and of course, you know, I hasten to add, post-Brexit, that we have this newfound independence as a nation, and Charles can be very much the figurehead of that. It's an opportunity for the country, and it's an opportunity for Charles himself to make history.
We've gone through, as you quite rightly say, Mark, a whole raft of things that have not helped this country in the slightest, things that are out of our control, not in our own hands. But yes, I mean, I just wish occasionally we could maybe have a state situation practically every day to get the people, you know, behind something. If you remember, just before the coronation, we had all sorts of various polls saying, "Oh, the monarchy's useless. It's dying. It's not. It's not. This monarchy is going to go on forever and ever." And I think for the vast majority of people in this country, about 85%, who've never seen a coronation, this was their day. This was their coronation. And that is a fantastic event that will lead us forward. It helps make Britain great. All of this helps make Britain great.
Yes, and you know Charles intimately well. You've reported on his movements and his activities and his every thought for many decades now. He loves this country and he'll fight for it.
I don't think he would say I was intimately well with him, but yeah, I've met him many times, and as some of you people have already said, great sense of humour. He definitely does support this country and everything it does. He tries to help, has done all along with the Prince's Trust before when he was just Prince of Wales. He's handed it over now to his son. And the one thing I think you were mentioning earlier on about Charles you know, toning down his political views, that is absolutely true. He knows, as Sir Robert Buckland was saying in the break, that he's got to tone down, but it's not going to stop him giving a nudge, nudge, wink, wink to his son as Prince of Wales to maybe come up with a few controversial matters.
Well, Charlie, you've certainly exposed plenty of his darkest secrets, covering the Royal Beat at the Sun newspaper. Your brilliant autobiography is out now. Give us a name check for your book, Your Tales of Fleet Street.
It's called Fleet Street Frolics.
There you go, and there are plenty of those, let me tell you. A rip-roaring read. Thank you, Charles. We'll catch up soon. Charles Ray there, former royal correspondent at the Sun newspaper, having broken some of the biggest royal stories. Lots more to get through coming up next with the pundits. Was the coronation balcony too white? That's what a famous actress has said in the last 24 hours. After his antics yesterday, should Prince Louis be sent to the Tower? We'll be discussing whether children should be behaved at formal occasions. And also, we'll be joined live by the special royal photographer, the first photographer ever to take a photograph of Charles, Diana and William in 1982. Lots to get through. We've still got coronation fever. Long live the King. I'll see you in 2.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Britain.
That is also a possibility, yeah.
There you go, the case of the disappearing presenter. I'm over on the sofa, very much comfortable here because I've got my pundits with me. And let's have a look at a couple more of your emails. A massive response to my big opinion. I would argue that May the 4th, those local elections were spectacularly bad for the Tories, but not spectacularly good for Labour. I think they demonstrate that Labour cannot win an overall majority at the next election. Tim says, hi, Mark. Can you be more impartial, please, and less hostile towards Sir Keir and Labour? Or are you and your fellow presenters Tory supporters and a touch irritated by the mauling the Tories received at last week's local council elections? Tim, thank you for that, calling or emailing from the gorgeous, gorgeous location of Cornwall. No, I'm not a supporter of any party. I'm one of those people, like millions, who go into the ballot box on election day and have a big old think, who's it going to be this time? In my life, I have voted Lib Dem, Conservative, Labour more than once, and green. I must have been drunk on that occasion, but there you go. Keep those opinions coming. And Tim, thank you very much for challenging me, because that's what this show is all about. And yes, I'd like to get more messages of support for Starmer, because I know you're out there. Mark at gbnews.uk. Now, we've received so many Coronation Day pictures. Let's have a few more. This is Amanda's son, very fine lad, wearing 2 flags on his head. Well done. And we've also got her daughter enjoying the coronation next to the king himself. And what a winning smile. Great job, Amanda. You've got 2 lovely kids. Phil says this pic was taken at my 92-year-old mother-in-law's coronation party in Wigan. Gorgeous. Lauren says, I'm celebrating on my own tonight with my bunnies in Scotland as I have COVID. Oh, darling, get well soon. And please don't give COVID to the rabbit. He'll be hopping mad. So, reacting to the big stories of the day, my brilliant pundits tonight, journalist and political consultant Emma Burnell, legendary DJ and broadcaster Neil Fox, and political and social commentator Lynn May. Now, let's talk about the coronation. And, of course, those scenes on the balcony, that iconic photograph of the family posing for the world's press. Well, was that photo terribly white? That was the verdict of Bridgerton star Adjoa Andoa, who, while speaking on ITV, drew a contrast between the diversity on display during the service at Westminster Abbey and the aftermath when the family gathered on the balcony. So what do we think? Was the balcony too white, Lynn May?
Well, yeah, not too white. It was white, and there's nothing wrong with it being white. I don't understand. The way how she made it seem was that it was a negative thing, it was a bad thing. And, you know, especially people from my community, our whole aim has been to, you know, ensure that there isn't this inequality or this racism or whatever the case may be. So for her to now make people feel like to be white is a bad thing is just counterproductive, from my opinion.
OK, what do you think, Neil?
I think it was just a really inappropriate comment, I'll be honest, because I thought what I loved about, and I watched everything to do with the coronation yesterday, what I thought was fabulous about it was clearly we have 1,000 years of history, and lots of that coronation ceremony yesterday were steeped in history and tradition. There was an awful lot, though, that had changed. It moved on an awful lot from 1952, from Elizabeth II, you know, just from the gospel choir to the different accents, the voices, the female bishops. There was so much in there that was different. Yeah. And there was an awful lot of diversity on the show. I thought it was a brilliantly balanced, fabulous, you know, celebration and a modern coronation of our wonderful nation. So I think to say that, the reality is the royal family are white. I mean, I think if you'd put people, token people of another colour in there, I think that's what it would have been, and that's ridiculous. I think they're a white family. I can't see that's not the problem. I think if they'd done nothing in the ceremony, people might have may have had a problem with it.
This reminds me of a story a couple of years ago. Do you remember this, Emma, when a young woman went on holiday and she posted, she was with 2 mates and they were in Ibiza or somewhere, and somebody commented on the photo that it was a very white group. It was just 3 girls on holiday getting drunk and chasing boys. I mean, this is ridiculous too. It's hard to make families diverse, isn't it?
Well, I mean, not over generations, but yeah, in a moment, yeah. For me, the question is that balcony scene too white? That is who their family is. You always put the family on the balcony. The bigger question for me is, why is one family in charge of all of this? I didn't watch the coronation, but I also don't want to be the Grinch. Other people have enjoyed it and loved it and had a lovely day. That's great. I took myself off to the cinema. Fine.
And you didn't have to fight for a seat?
I did not. Well, actually, it was quite full, but yeah, that's...
Well, I hope it was a diverse crowd, because it's 2023.
It was East London, mate.
Does it get more diverse? Well, let's get the views of the legendary royal photographer Ian Pelham-Turner, who has worked with 5 generations of the royal family and won royal awards for the first official Christmas photographs of Prince William, Prince Charles and Princess Diana at Kensington Palace in 1982. Ian has just opened an exhibition of exclusive royal pictures going back to 1935, which can now be seen at the Lansdowne Club in London. Ian, good to have you on the show. What's your reaction to this set of comments about the balcony photo yesterday being too white?
I think, for me, I want to see really a united royal family. That's point number one, because I think the strength of the royal family together, and I'm talking about Harry and Meghan as well, all of them together make a much stronger brand value for Britain. I want Great Britain to become Great Britain again. I want Great Britain to win right across the world. And so for me, as a really big royalist, but as a loyalist to Britain as well, I think they need to step up to the plate at the same time. They need to get back together again. And don't forget, for me, we pay for the royal family. It's the blood, sweat and tears of people in Britain, their taxes, that pay for the royal family. And I think it's very, very important they come back together again. And actually, then we can actually promote the royal family, promote Great Britain right across the world and show, okay, I understand all the problems with Harry and Meghan. For me, Meghan actually is the epitome of Diana, because I see a lot of what Meghan stands for now and the way she actually reacts to crowds, for example, exactly the same as Diana did. And she gave me goosebumps when I first saw her starting to work, because I worked a lot with Diana. And Meghan, I swear to goodness, is exactly the same. But let's bring them all back.
Well, yes, I've got lots of friends in Fleet Street, and they all said that when Meghan arrived, they felt they had the new Diana. Ian, can you tell me about photographing Charles, Diana and William in 1982? This was a happy moment for the family, wasn't it, before it all went horribly wrong?
It was a happy moment for the royal family. Basically, in those days, you were given 7 minutes. I was given 7 minutes to take the most iconic shots for the world. 2 cameras, one with colour, one with black and white, 7 minutes. Whatever happened, that's what I had to photograph. And I was told by the equerry the week before they would come and sit down. They would say good morning to me. I would say good morning back. That's it. No more talk, no more direction, nothing at all. And so, first of all, Diana had brought William's teething ring, and she was holding William's teething ring up to look at, for me to look, so that he'd be looking at the camera, and she was hiding her face. So for 4 of these 7 very precious moments, I couldn't see the most famous woman in the world. And I was told I can't talk to them, I can't direct them, anything. So in the end, I made a noise like I was dying. And Diana turned round to me and she smiled because she realised I was breaking protocol, but I wasn't, because I hadn't said anything. I was just making a noise. And so she moved William's teething ring away. William went to grab the teething ring, and that photograph became Royal Photography of the Year in 1983 because of that.
And
but
the rest
then
is...
it didn't stop.
Yeah. The rest is history, Ian, and you're a very, very clever man, and you've made such a contribution to the image of the royals over the years. Let me tell our viewers, if you're based down south, that Ian Pelham-Turner, his exhibition of exclusive royal pictures going back to 1935, can now be seen at the Lansdowne Club in London. Good luck with the exhibition, Ian. I wish we had longer, but I salute you for your amazing work. There you go, Ian Pelham-Turner. Thanks, Ian. Look, lots more to come. Next up, my Mark Meets guest is Nick Wallace, author of a stunning new book about the celebrity court case of the century, as Amber Heard and Johnny Depp battled each other over allegations of domestic abuse. It was the most chaotic relationship since Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and that story is next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In my Take at 10, I'll be dealing with Prince Harry, but it's time now for Mark Meets and what was the most explosive celebrity marriage since Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Well, it turned into a celebrity court case of the century as well, as Amber Heard, Hollywood actress, and Pirates of the Caribbean star Johnny Depp battled each other over allegations of domestic abuse. So who were the winners and losers? How did things get so bad for this troubled pair who were at one point so deeply in love and arguably the most attractive couple on the planet? This amazing story is tackled in a stunning new book by Nick Wallace. And Nick Wallace joins me now. Hi, Nick.
Hi there, Mark.
Great to have you on the show. Nick, can you give me the full title of the book, please?
Yes, it's Depp v. Heard, The Unreal Story. We settled on that because it's both real and unreal at the same time.
Yes, indeed. Tell me what's behind that title, because essentially their relationship was a paradox, wasn't it?
It wasn't. It was also 2 completely contrasting narratives which split apart viciously when the couple went their separate ways in the middle of 2016. It had been an almost a fairy tale story, at least as far as we knew until 2016. But of course, what came out in the subsequent court cases was all the allegations of violence which Amber Heard made against Johnny Depp and drug taking and bad behavior, and his protestations that he was a completely innocent party. And so once that started spiraling out, the reason it became both real and unreal was because I was in court both in the UK and this time last year, in fact, in Virginia, hearing these very clearly laid out narratives from people in court making their own testimony with their supporting witnesses, which were utterly at odds with each other, and trying to hold these competing narratives in your head at the same time and make sense of them and turn them into anything that made sense was that unreal experience, especially when the whole of America became gripped by this case. In fact, the whole world became gripped by the case because the courtroom shenanigans were being televised.
Well, absolutely right. And look, early doors, they were very much in love. But to what extent was substance abuse an issue in their marriage, do you think?
Well, Amber Heard said that both her parents were addicts. And when she met Johnny Depp, he was largely clean. And the first year of their relationship, she said that he wasn't drinking and he wasn't taking many drugs. He's always said that he likes to smoke marijuana. But he fell off the wagon, and she said that he started to black out. He started to behave in violent ways when he'd lost control of his faculties because of the amount of mind-expanding drugs and alcohol that he'd been taking. So she sees his drug use as a key reason behind the violence and his denials, because he simply didn't know what he was doing. Now, he says there's absolutely no way that he could have hit a woman, and that she was actually nagging him and trying to provoke him and gaslighting him. And the way that he presented his case last year in Virginia was that she was the abusive partner. She was the one who was causing all his problems. She was actually trying to manipulate him and say that if you don't give me what I want, then I'm going to go to the public and say that you've been abusing me. So again, I mean, the book was an exercise in pulling together these wildly disparate narratives and actually looking at the evidence, not just the testimony, not just the witness evidence, but the contemporaneous documentary evidence. And there are thousands of pages of that, and trying to actually piece together who could or who might have been telling the truth about each specific contested incident over the course of their relationship. Because eventually Amber Heard went to court in 2020 when she was the star witness for the Sun newspaper in their libel trial against Johnny Depp, and detailed more than a dozen violent incidents against him throughout the course of their relationship.
Yes, and of course that case was brought against our own Dan Wootton as well. Dan and the Sun were victorious. Johnny Depp went on to defeat Amber Heard. Who have been the winners and losers in this whole saga, do you think?
The lawyers.
Right.
I mean, there have been tens of millions of pounds expended on both sides of the Atlantic on some of the finest legal minds in the business. And whether it has served Johnny Depp or Amber Heard very well as a result, I don't know. But Johnny Depp said at the beginning of his trial in the US, he said, I've been waiting 6 years for the opportunity to tell my truth. Now, he was in court, obviously, for 4 days back in the UK in 2020, but he was being cross-examined. So he was being challenged on his version of the truth. Whereas in the US, they start with a direct examination before they go to cross-examination. So he was given time by his lawyers live on worldwide television to set out exactly why he is not a wife beater in his view, and why the jury in Virginia should find him or should find for him in his libel claim against Amber Heard, which they eventually did.
Nick, your book has been described as unputdownable. It's also an important historic document in terms of showbiz. Only got a couple of seconds. Has Johnny Depp got any money left? Because he made tens of millions of pounds as an actor, didn't he?
Oh, he was one of Hollywood's highest paid stars at the beginning of the 20-teens. And he was making tens of millions of dollars on each episode or each franchise of the Pirates of the Caribbean series. So he had money to burn. The problem was his expenditure, even before his legal troubles, was huge. He was burning through $300,000 a month on his island in the Bahamas.
He was on the road to ruin. Well, Nick, let me tell you, your book is out now. Nick Wallace is the author of Depp versus Heard, The Unreal Story. Grab yourself a copy. I'll be dealing with Prince Harry next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan tonight. In my take at 10, Prince Harry's blink and you'll miss it appearance at the coronation was another slap in the face to his father and the country. I'll be dealing with the world's least happy millionaire in no uncertain terms and you won't want to miss it. I'm not pulling my punches. Prince Harry, if you're of a sensitive disposition, look away. Tonight's newsmaker is politics legend Anne Widdecombe. I'll be asking Anne whether the police were too hard on the royal protesters. Do you think they went too far? Also, are the Tories really sunk? And Anne will give us her highlights from yesterday's coronation. Anne's a bit of a queen in her own right, isn't she? She's the queen of Mark Dolan tonight. We've also got tomorrow's Monday morning papers, bang on at 10:30, hot off the press, with full pundit reaction. Tonight, reacting to the papers, we have Emma Burnell, journalist and political consultant, DJ and broadcaster Neil Fox, and political and social commentator Lynn May. So many great pundits, tomorrow's papers, and my take at 10. I will be dealing with Prince Harry. So as always, big guests, big stories and big opinions. A lively hour to come, but first the headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Mark, thank you very much. Here's your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. The Prince of Wales has paid a touching public tribute to his father, King Charles, saying the whole family is so proud of him. Prince William delivered his speech in front of a crowd of 20,000 people at Windsor Castle, who were all enjoying the coronation concert. The heir to the throne also made reference to his late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, saying she would be a very proud mother. He also praised the King's decades of service, his campaigning on green issues and support for people of all backgrounds and faiths. The royal family attended en masse to see performances by Take That, Katy Perry and Lionel Richie. Ahead of the show, host Hugh Bonneville said it's going to be a great night.
There's so many standout moments from what I've seen. There's a beautiful poem composed especially for the event. There's a remarkable finale, both visually and orally, and some astonishing pop performances along the way, and as well as classical performances from Andrea Bocelli and Sabrina Terfel. So I think there really is something for everyone tonight. It's going to be magical.
Tens of thousands of street parties have been held across the UK to continue the celebrations. The annual event run by Eden Project communities said 67,000 big lunch events were planned today. The royal family were out in force to show their thanks. Sisters Princess Beatrice and Eugenie were at an event in Buckinghamshire. And the Duke of Edinburgh, Edward, and his wife Sophie stopped by a lunch in Surrey. Well-wishers said the parties brought out the best of British.
It's lovely to see all the people and the balloons out and everything. Yeah, excellent.
It doesn't happen often enough to get people to get together, and they should. Like a day like this, great.
It's a very nice, creative thing to bring us all together to celebrate this, because it's a one-in-a-lifetime thing. I don't think I'm going to experience it again.
We think it's wonderful. There's so many people have come to support it, and we've even got, nice fine weather after all the rain.
And what did you make of the coronation?
We loved it. We loved every minute of it, especially seeing little Louis singing the national anthem all the way through.
Yeah, I was impressed, yeah. It makes you proud to be British, doesn't it?
The First Lady of the US, Jill Biden, was one of the special guests hosted at a big lunch by the Prime Minister and his wife outside Downing Street. Recipients of the Points of Light Award, which has been given to ordinary people doing extraordinary things for their community, were also there, as were some Ukrainian refugees and their hosts. The government has defended the police response to protests ahead of the coronation after complaints that officers went too far. 52 people were arrested, including from the anti-monarchy group Republic and Just Stop Oil. Amnesty International's policing expert says the Metropolitan Police may have misused new powers granted by the Public Order Bill, but the force insists they acted in line with legislation, and the Culture Secretary, Lucy Fraser, said the new powers are there to be used. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark.
My thanks to Bethany Elsey, who is back in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. This evening's newsmaker is politics legend Anne Widdecombe. I'll be asking Anne whether the Tories are really sunk and whether the police were too hard on royal protesters. Plus, Anne's highlights from yesterday's coronation. We'll bring you tomorrow's headlines, hot off the press, bang on at 10:30. And as Penny Mordaunt is touted as prime ministerial material just because she carried a sword around for a while and looked solemn, I'll be asking if the Mordaunt love-in is overblown. So lots of stories to get through, including tomorrow's papers. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. We start with my take at 10. Do you remember that cartoon book, Where's Wally? It was an illustrated game that contained images of huge crowds, and you had to find a skinny little nerd, a bit like me, to be honest, who was somewhere in the picture with his stripy shirt, glasses, and bobble hat. Well, yesterday, I spent most of the coronation playing a game of Where's Harry?, in which we had to spot the world's least happy millionaire as he made a flying visit to his father's coronation. It tells you everything you need to know about the arrogant and self-centred nature of this boy, that he should jet in purely to show his smirking face at the ceremony before jumping back on a plane and returning to a place where he can pretend he's popular, where everything is pretend, Hollywood, California. Astonishing that he couldn't stick around for a pint and a couple of sandwiches with the family after such an important ceremony. You know, the small matter of his father being crowned King of the United Kingdom. He was here long enough to advertise the fact that the suit he was wearing was by the French fashion house Christian Dior. They tweeted with enormous pride that they had dressed him for the occasion. Does he not even pay for his own clothes now? And did he wear the outfit as part of a potential megabucks deal, one to add to all the others? Could he not bring himself to fly the flag for a British tailoring brand? Something from Savile Row, perhaps, Turnbull and Asser, Jeeves and Hawkes, or even Marks and Spencer, or John Lewis. Why not? This is John Lewis. Isn't it gorgeous? George at Asda is too good for that numpty. Harry's fleeting appearance at the coronation was another nail in the coffin for his relationship with the British people, whose generosity, support and hard-earned taxes have made him one of the most privileged and famous men in the world. Well, there's an old saying, do something properly or not at all. And if attending the coronation, he should have been here for a few days, met the public, spent time with his UK family and paid his dues. Instead, it was show and go. Next time, don't bother. And don't give me that guff about needing to be back for your son's birthday. Poor Archie and his little sister should have been here, but thanks to his prolonged hissy fit, they will now miss out on being part of history. In years to come, they'll look at old photos and they'll say, Daddy, why weren't we on that balcony? And he'll have some explaining to do. Whether it was sulking Harry, Republican protesters, chip on their shoulder politicians or political pundits who tried to talk down the event, the result of the coronation was a clear one. Britain haters 0, Britain lovers 1. Which is why it's no great shame that Prince Harry, who has caused so much damage to the reputation of not just the royal family, but the country, has gone back to La La Land with his tail between his legs. As a result of his own actions, he was a mere extra yesterday, and I think he should be written out of the show altogether. Prince Harry's blink and you'll miss it appearance at the coronation was another slap in the face to his father and his country. Next time, don't bother. Where's Wally is a fun and addictive game. Where's Harry? Who cares? Your reaction to Harry's blink and you'll miss it appearance at the coronation, was it worth the effort? Let me know, Mark at gbnews.uk. Reacting to my take at 10. My top pundits tonight, journalist and political consultant Emma Burnell, legendary DJ and broadcaster Neil Fox, and political and social commentator Lynn May. Neil Fox, your reaction to Harry's blink and you'll miss it appearance?
Well, it was pretty short, wasn't it? Let's be honest. I suppose none of us really were just guessing about what was said behind closed doors and on various emails and telephone conversations about what he was expected to do, what he was allowed to do. It was, you kind of read between the lines. He was probably told it might be a good idea to leave the wife and the family at home. You come if you want to come, but let's not make too much of a big deal of it all. I do think it would have been rather nice if he could have stayed a little bit longer, maybe to say hello to his dad after he had just... I was smiling at the sarcasm. When he said, you know, his dad had just become the king of the United Kingdom. So, yes, hanging around a bit, but to a certain extent, you can imagine if he had hung around for hours and hours and maybe gone to the concert tonight, people could equally have criticised him for trying to gain too much of the limelight. I mean, he was in a no-win situation, whatever happened, to be fair, about yesterday. I'm glad in many respects he came and then he tootled off, and that's probably the end of it. But the rest of the day, I just thought was absolutely magnificent, and it didn't really bother me whether he was there or not. I'm glad he was there to see his father become king. He should have been there. But as you quite rightly said, really, it would be lovely. And actually, the royal photographer earlier on said, you know what, any problems about what that balcony looked like, whether it was too white, if he had managed to have his family there with him and his wife there, that would have been a problem solved, wouldn't it? And it would be lovely if one day sensible heads can get around a table, sort this out, and a family can all get back together. That would be good.
Indeed, I agree with you, Neil. Lynn May, that balcony was too white. It needed someone with red hair on it. That would be Harry. But he's brought this on himself, hasn't he? And I just think that as he was coming to the coronation, he should have just spent longer here, perhaps met the crowds and thanked the British people for everything they've done for him.
It's not often that I actually disagree with you, Mark, but on this occasion, Harry is damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. And I think there's all of this narrative or rhetoric that we're sick to death of Harry, we're sick to death of Meghan. We've often said it on the show. So, yes, he came. He did the bare minimum, which I'm actually quite happy with. They want their privacy. For once, they're adhering to their request for privacy. He came. It is his son's birthday, and any of the viewers, feel free to tweet if I'm incorrect, but I'm sure where they live is over a 10-hour flight away. So you can imagine him coming in, having to go back, spend time with his 4-year-old. And 4-year-olds really remember them, so it's good that he's with his son. So, yeah, I'm happy that he just was in and out.
All right, well, there you go. Now, listen, I know you're not wildly motivated by the goings-on we've enjoyed in the last couple of days, Emma Burnell, but just on a human level, do you think that Harry acted correctly?
I think whatever Harry had done,
there would have been a monologue from you or somebody else saying that he'd done it wrong. Because that's the current narrative about Harry, and there's nothing he could have done. I mean, literally, the content of that was he turned up to the thing he was supposed to turn up to in a suit. OK, good, that sounds nice. I really genuinely don't particularly care on the royal level. On the family level, I think he did what he was supposed to do, what he was told to do, what he was asked to do. That seems reasonable to me. And now he's gone home to California, where he genuinely lives, to his family, who's apparently is having a birthday. He turned up for his dad, now he's turning up for his son. That, on a family level, that seems like the right thing to do.
I'm glad Meghan also stayed away. And just to add, I'm a bit mystified as to why people keep on saying that if Meghan came and was on the balcony, it would create diversity. She's so white passing. I remember a comedian, Gina Racheray, put up a picture of brunette white women and she was in there and you could not tell the difference. So whether she was there or not, diversity would be a no-starter in terms of that topic.
That's a fair point. I mean, Emma, just going back to that word you used, family, and I think that's the key word here. I just think to the family it's disrespectful that he should make such a fleeting appearance. But you know, if something happened, Emma, if something happened in your family and it was a really, really big moment for your dad, let's say, you wouldn't want one of your siblings just turning up for the ceremony and then getting the hell out. You'd want them to stick around, a couple of sandwiches, a pint of beer and chill with the group.
That, in my family, my brother does live in Australia. He lives an even further plane ride away, and we haven't seen him for several years. Seeing him this July, can't wait. The honest truth is, that would be negotiated in the family. If there was a member of the family with whom we were out, thank God that's not currently the case, but it generally would be the case that there would be a management of, let's get them in, let's be polite for as long as we can, and then let's get them out, and everybody's happy that way.
Are we forgetting the book as well?
What's happened.
What about the book? Are we forgetting that he literally dashed his family under the bus? Why would we want him to be there longer?
And Mark, let me ask you a question, Mark, because you always ask us a question. Do you seriously not think that everything about this coronation has been so meticulously arranged down to the last nano detail, and brilliantly, by the way? Do you not think everything about how long Harry would stay, where he would sit, probably when he'd head off back to the airport, would not have been also managed down to the nth degree? And I think probably this is not a surprise to anyone in the family that he probably went straight off, while the attention is on, quite rightly, the King and the Queen and that magnificent procession as they made their way back to Buckingham Palace. You know, he just came out and he slipped off. No one noticed, wasn't on the TV. He just went, he was at Heathrow, he flew off. And to a certain extent, that's kind of perfect.
Well, Neil, I'll agree with you. It's great that he was relegated to the cheap seats, along with Prince Andrew and a couple of other ne'er-do-wells. But there were reports earlier in the week that palace insiders were having more trouble negotiating with Harry and his people about if he was coming and when and where he'd sit than with Sinn Féin. So I think that's a damning anecdote in its own right. Look, I believe that it was a snub for Harry to stay so briefly. I think if I was Prince Harry, if I were third, fourth in line to the throne, I'd be coming back to Britain. I'd drag the wife and kids with me, by the way, non-negotiable. And I would be up and down that mall, and I'd be meeting and greeting the public, as I had the privilege of doing, actually, on Friday on this show when I went down to the mall. I would be humble, I would meet the public, and I would say to the British people, thank you for everything you've done. Instead, it was show and go. And I say, no, no, no. But what's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. This programme's a broad church. It's a show in which the presenter gets disagreed with and shouted at, and that's what it's all about. So do put a spanner in the works. Let me know if you think I'm being too hard on Harry. Mark at gbnews.uk. Next up, we've got the jewel in the crown of Mark Dolan tonight, Anne Widdecombe, and I'll be asking Anne whether the police were too hard on royal protesters and Anne Widdecombe's coronation memories. That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it. like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to our Prince Harry debate. That, of course, is because of my take at 10, in which I've said that Harry's fleeting visit to the UK for the coronation was an insult to the King and the country. This from Kay, who says, hi, Mark, if Harry is not a citizen of America, he can't leave the country for more than the permitted days. And maybe he's saving them for his court case. Is he putting in for American citizenship? Hi, Mark, I didn't want Harry or Meghan to come after he has treated his family so appallingly. But as far as Princess Anne goes, she had one job to do and she smashed it. Harry never looked better with that feather in front of his face. Brilliant stuff. Look, I'll get some more of your emails shortly. I do love getting them. It's always the highlight of the show, but it's time now for another highlight. The Newsmaker, in which we tackle a major news story of the day in the company of a fearless commentator. As always on a Sunday, my Newsmaker is former government minister, best-selling author and television personality Anne Widdecombe. And great to have you back on the programme. As discussed in my big opinion earlier, the Tories took a beating in the local elections last week. Are they down but not out?
I think that probably sums it up. Certainly they did. They took a drubbing, but it wasn't as bad as it might have been. And they do have, a year, more than a year to go. So it is possible that they can make some recovery, but as I've said umpteen times before, they're not going to make it by following the path they're following at the moment, which is effectively keep the ship steady, but we don't know where it's going.
Do you anticipate a shift in terms of policy between now and the next election from number 10?
Well, I don't necessarily anticipate it because I don't think they understand that that is what needs to happen. I don't think they've grasped the fact that people want lower taxes, for example. So I don't necessarily anticipate it, but I would like to see it because it would be a sign that they're actually listening. At the moment, as I say, they're concentrating hugely on steadiness without having a clue about destination. And they could find that they've kept a very steady ship, which ends up on some rocks.
And in my big opinion, I said that the results from the May the 4th local elections were spectacularly bad for the Tories, but not spectacularly good for Labour. It's my view that based upon these results, Labour cannot form an overall majority at the next election. What's your view?
I think that reading is also right. It's one of the reasons why I said that I thought you were right to say they were down, but they weren't out. The Tories, that is. Because Labour should have done a great deal better. These are midterm elections. The government has been through a period of great turmoil. The cost of living is terrible. We got strikes everywhere. Inflation's dreadful. And you would have thought, therefore, that the opposition would have had some spectacular successes, but actually their successes were, comparatively speaking, modest.
I know you're no cheerleader for Rishi Sunak. You consider him and the Conservative Party to be a great disappointment, Anne, which is why you're backing Reform UK at the next election. But do you think in a presidential face-off between Sunak and Starmer that Sunak edges it?
Oh, I think there's no doubt about that. I mean, Starmer, it just has nothing to offer. I mean, every time I see him, I think, well, what is it he's just said? Because he makes no impact at all. And when he does state something, within a very short time, he's reversed it. Just reversed it. So if you actually took a microphone out there and asked people on the street, what are Rishi Sunak's big policies, they couldn't tell you because there aren't any.
And let's get to the coronation now. Were anti-monarchy protesters treated badly by the police? Were the police overzealous?
Ask yourself this question. If just one, and don't forget they weren't just anti-monarchists, there was the eco-oil people and all the rest of them there as well. Just ask yourself this question. If just one of those demonstrators from whichever group had glued themselves to a road or had spooked the horses with a megaphone, if just one of them had done that, the uproar would be enormous. What were the police doing? The police had all the time in the world to prepare for it. The police have got new powers. Because the police were absolutely determined that that was not going to happen and that they were going to take immediate action if they saw people with megaphones or with what they thought were attachments. If that was what they decided to do, they did it splendidly. And my attitude to what happened at the coronation is to say to the police, congratulations now, do it again, because normally they go there and they offer the protesters tea. Do it again, constables. Do it again.
Anne has spoken. Anne, your memories from the last 24 hours, the coronation, your highlights.
Well, it's been so wonderful that it's very difficult to say that one bit was any more wonderful than the other. I think that picture of the king when he'd got all what I call the bits and pieces, which is a bit disrespectful, but he got the orb, he got the sceptre, and he was sitting there with the medieval robe on, and it was a moment when you could have been looking at any king in history. And I think that was a wonderful moment. You forestalled me. I was also going to comment on Princess Anne's very convenient feather.
Indeed so. I love Princess Anne. In fact, I like both Annes, Princess Anne and Queen Anne, the jewel in the crown of Mark Dolan tonight. Anne, we can't wait to catch up in a week's time. Anne, of course, our regular newsmaker on a Sunday, best-selling author, television personality and former government minister. And Anne, I can leave you with the results of our text poll with our viewers and listeners. Earlier today, we asked, did the police go too far with the protesters? 24% said yes, but a thumping 76% said no. They are with Anne on that one. Thanks, Anne. We'll see you in 7 days' time. Lots more to come. We've got the papers next with full pundit reaction. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, and it's time now for tomorrow's papers. So let's have one of those sting business that they've got. Isn't that lovely? There you go. It is tomorrow's papers. You can set your watch to it every Friday, Saturday and Sunday. We have the papers, and we start with The Guardian, and they lead with the following. NHS patients developing cancer due to long waits, according to a top GP. Patients are developing cancer and enduring so much pain that they cannot climb stairs because of the 7.2 million strong waiting list for NHS scans and treatment. This, according to one of Britain's top GPs, Professor Camilla Hawthorne. Also, blood test for tired drivers could pave the way for prosecutions. Fascinating story. A blood test to find out whether a driver who has caused an accident was impaired by lack of sleep could be available within 2 years. Research comes as evidence suggests driving on less than 5 hours sleep is dangerous. In fact, as dangerous as being over the drink-drive limit. Also, the coronation. Was it magic or just an empty conjuring trick? There you go. A slightly sceptical note being struck there by The Guardian in relation to the coronation. Next up, we've got The Mirror. Will's tribute to Dad. Granny would be proud. Prince of Wales says late Queen is up there, fondly keeping an eye on all of us. He added, Prince William said, the late Queen would have been a proud mother whilst watching over the King being crowned. In another heartfelt moment during his speech, the Prince of Wales said, Pa, we are all so proud of you. Moving stuff. And the I newspaper, Britain more open to the idea of a political king. Interesting. Public is increasingly receptive to the UK's monarch campaigning and becoming vocal on political issues. This according to new polling from the I. Under 25s are especially open to Charles III voicing his views publicly, in stark contrast to the Queen's strict neutrality for 70 years. 46% of the public say the king should keep his views to himself, but 38% would like him to speak out. Almost half of people aged 18 to 24 believe he should campaign on political issues. OK, well, those are your front pages. And let's get straight to that story, Lynn May. Britain open to the idea of a more political king. That's asking for trouble, isn't it?
I think, yeah. I don't know how he would maintain impartiality or non-bias when it comes to certain things. And then if he does happen to influence or say something which would be easy for him to do, he might just say something on, let's say, climate, which he loves. And let's say, for example, that's big with Labour or Green, then it could influence them, and I don't think that's a good idea.
No, indeed. And the point is that anything, whether it's child poverty, whether it's the environment, whether it's COVID lockdowns, everything is political.
Yes.
Because the policies with which to tackle those issues always impact the public and sometimes cost money.
And I don't know if he has, if he's in touch enough to have such a vocal opinion on those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, it's telling, isn't it, that younger people want a campaigning prince. Is that because, Neil, younger people sign up to more orthodoxies than older people? Perhaps young people just think that net zero is a goal that we've got to have, whereas older people might debate it.
Well, I think, look, social media has changed an awful lot in our world. Some bad reasons, but an awful lot of good's come out of it as well. And the one thing I think it's given, particularly a younger generation, because they've grown up and lived with it, is that it means that they can have a voice. And disparate groups can have a voice now and be heard, whereas maybe they thought no one was listening before. And I think, I mean, weirdly, I've been talking to both my fellow panellists here, saying I really would like to see, as this monarchy moves forward, look, we had 70 years of Elizabeth II, who was magnificent, but in an era from 1952 to 2022. OK, we're in a completely different world now. And I think, actually, to be relevant in a future monarchy, I think King Charles III needs to be more outspoken on issues. Now, for him, it's easy to start with because he's always been very outspoken about our country, about the climate, about the environment, about nature. Now, that should not be a political, it shouldn't be a political question to tackle or to have a voice on. If he says nothing, when particularly the world knows what his views are on these things, it would almost be ridiculous now. And why shouldn't he speak out on things that potentially could affect our country and other countries in our Commonwealth, and then outside of that, other countries in the world?
See, I disagree with that. Yeah, because, OK, let's say, for example, climate. I understand we need to do something. But at the same time, if he were to come out and say we need to do far more, it would give rise for the government to tax us higher when it comes to green taxes, and I don't want that. But then they will say, well, your king wants it, so, you know, and then...
Yeah, or to stop you driving a diesel car, or to ration the number of flights you take every year.
No, I do understand that, but I do think if he does nothing, and then, of course, look ahead maybe 20 years, and maybe look ahead to King William coming to the throne, you have to kind of go, what will be, you know, we've now got a Republican movement that's bigger than it was 70 years ago, for sure. And obviously Emma's going to be nodding this, but you do kind of think that people will be asking questions. So what do they do? What is their relevance in the modern world?
Does nothing was the genius of the Queen for 7 decades.
Yeah, but he's not the Queen. I mean, quite obviously.
Yeah. And the world's different now.
And the world, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we do need to separate.
The head of state is a figurehead. They don't have to have an opinion.
They don't have to have an opinion, but they don't have to not have an opinion either. You know, there've been throughout our history kings and queens who've been very active in terms of what the country should look like. I've been working my way through the Hilary Mantel books, so you know, literally who should be the head of the religion. Very, very political issues. What we need to separate out is political and party political. No, Prince Charles should not be wearing a rosette of any colour and telling you who to vote for. On the other hand, what he can do is use his role, not just as head of state for the UK, but head of the Commonwealth, to do some a convening role on issues that we already know he cares about. So it could be climate change, would be a perfect...
Well, what about another example? Should the King speak out about the Stop the Boats policy in the way that the Archbishop of Canterbury has spoken out? I don't think he should, but would that be an example of where the King should be more active?
I think that would be more complex because that's a policy that is contested between government and opposition. Whereas what Charles shouldn't be doing is saying this is the policy you should adopt in order to address climate change. What he should be doing is saying any government of any colour should be working to address climate change.
And one thing I have to say, well, we always have to remember is, if you look at that coronation service yesterday, what was brilliant was how traditional it was and how brilliant it was that it was so different from and how it had moved forward, but in small, nuanced ways. And that's what the monarchy have always been brilliant at doing. They're not going to be doing huge, leaping changes. Everything will be small, nuanced, tiny, moving little steps forward. And that's what I think maybe they will do. I definitely think they will do with King Charles. I think he will be slightly more outspoken, but it'll be small areas. It'll be here, there. It won't be great, big policy changes, but I do think he will get involved, because I think he understands that's what he's quite passionate about. And I think it's interesting that, you know, you look at a survey like this, younger people that actually, yes, are his subjects and ultimately will be paying their taxes to look after their king and the family. Well, they're interested in seeing someone that maybe is caring about the issues that they are interested too.
I think that's because the Prince's Trust, though. You know, the Prince's Trust did some magnificent things for young people.
Correct.
I worked with them a lot. And so many people, even people that, you know, had reformed in prison, rehabilitated, they were giving funding, and they're now going on to brilliant things, never to reoffend.
Yep.
So I think maybe a lot of young people want to see that continue, and I really want to see that continue. But where it comes to politics, just sit there with your crown and look pretty.
There you go. Well, amen to that. That's certainly my view. Let's stay on the coronation, because a somewhat surprising start, should I say, to emerge from the festivities was the Tory MP and Lord President of the Privy Council, Penny Mordaunt. Some commentators are even touting Mordaunt for Prime Minister after she managed to carry a sword aloft throughout the service, a skill which clearly means she's eminently qualified to balance the books and fix the NHS. So has the Mordaunt loving gone too far? It's Mordaunt mania, Emma.
She looked fabulous. I mean, I didn't watch it, but I've seen the pictures. She does look... She looks like Princess Leia. Look, nobody should get any job off the back of being able to carry a sword, whether that's King Arthur or Penny Mordaunt. But on the other hand, this is actually somebody who has run for the leadership of the Conservative Party in the past. She did pretty well. She didn't quite get over the line when she wanted to run against Rishi Sunak. So is she a likely Tory candidate after... when there's a vacancy, let's be kind. Yes, I think she is.
But not because she wore a nice frock and she's got strong arms.
Carried a sword, but I don't think this has done her any harm.
Yeah. I mean, she was... It does make me laugh. The front page of The Guardian also, although it's quite negative about some things, at the top of it, it says the Penny Mordaunt challenge. Could we hold a sword up for that long? I mean, it's 3.5 kilos, so it's 8 pounds, and she held it up for 51 minutes. I have to say, amazing job. I think she looked fabulous, but not looked just in what she was wearing, but physically looked. I thought she looked like she had authority, and she was doing that job damn well.
OK, interesting stuff. Now, earlier on, we were asking you, was the Bridgerton actress Adjoa Andoh right to say the royal balcony photograph yesterday was terribly white? Well, the results are in, and 11.4% say yes, the balcony picture was too white. 88.6% say no. We've got many more newspaper front pages to come, plus top pundit reaction, and my pundits will be nominating their headline heroes and back page baddies. All of that is next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, lots of emails coming in thick and fast. This from Marion. Hi, Mark. I know you won't like me saying this, but from 8 p.m. until 10:15, I watched the most fantastic concert of animation and singing with top stars and, of course, the very warm, moving, loyal speech by Prince William to his PA, our king. Oh, sorry, Pa, I should say Pa. Freudian slip. Take a letter, Dad. And well done, BBC One, says Marion. And look, Marion, you're forgiven because what's important is you're with me now. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Also, Antonio, on the subject of Penny Mordaunt, she obviously wore this lovely frock and she carried the sword. Hi, Mark. Carrying a sword does not a Prime Minister make. Should Charles become more political? That's the headline in The Eye. Britain open to the idea of a more active political king. And Susan says, hi, Mark, King Charles should absolutely not be a political voice. Any monarch should stay out of opinions on anything. That's why the recent monarchy is still very popular. It's interesting that the left are saying he should have a voice. It would be the end of the monarch for sure if he did. Brilliant stuff. Well, look, let's get back to more of your emails shortly. Mark at gbnews.uk. I've got more front pages for you before we get to the pundits. And we start with the Telegraph. And they lead with a lovely photograph of the King and Queen greeting crowds. Pa, we are all so proud of you. At the words of the Prince of Wales, Charles's proud son, William. OK, next up we have the Times newspaper. And that's the same quote and the same photograph. Bit of a lack of variety there between the Telegraph and the Times. Pa, we're so proud of you. Prince of Wales pays tribute to King at Windsor concert. Street parties across the UK after coronation watched by 20 million. There you go. Including, I've got to say, fabulous ratings for GB News. Well done to Stephen and to Ellie and to Nigel and to Nana and the whole team that did such a great job throughout the coronation coverage. And of course, thank you to you for watching and listening. We are nothing without you. So back to the coronation, and there was plenty of competition for star of the show honours. But plenty of people opted for posing Prince Louis, who once again spent a supposedly solemn occasion yawning and playing up for the cameras. Now let's get my brilliant pundits in on this. Have we got any little bit of video that we can show the group? Let's take a look. OK, so there's Charles, and here is Louis speaking for a nation. He's not singing, folks. He's yawning his head off, bless him. What a sweet kid. And this is him at the Jubilee, rocking and rolling. Oh, no, that was actually him yesterday. I've gone mad.
Yeah.
There you go. Quite the performer. What an extrovert. He's one to watch for the future. So what do we think? Did we enjoy Prince Louis's antics, or should he be sent to the Tower? Emma?
I thought it was sweet. Bless him. His kid being a kid, let me be a kid.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I think if you tried to stick up his butt and make him act like a traditional royal child, you'll just end up with a very, very messed up adult. Let him be a kid.
Yeah. I mean, he's a character, isn't he? He's going to be one to watch, Lynn May.
No, definitely. He was saying earlier, I think he's going to be a Harry Part 2 when Harry was a bit more fun than he is now.
Yeah, I think that's it. It takes one. Every family, there's always one, isn't there?
Well, I was going to say, I think they seem to have done a very good job in a very strange world, keeping their kids relatively balanced and normal. They seem adorable kids, I have to say, but he's, what, 4 years of age, 5 years of age? I was trying to think when my son Jack was that age, trying to keep him, say, yeah, we're going to be here for 4 hours, Jack. just calm down. Honestly, there would have been some stern words in his ear. I mean, there was a time, actually, during the coronation where he disappeared for a bit, where I think someone had taken him outside, honestly, and then he suddenly reappeared back. He's back! But he seems a proper little character.
Yeah,
good on him.
He does indeed. Although, you're a dad, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you think that parents are responsible for their children at these formal events? I mean, do you think he should have been made to behave himself better?
Well, I think he behaved pretty well for a young man, honestly, of that age, because it's a long, pretty boring thing for a kid, let's be honest, isn't it? And you got to sit there and you know the eyes of the world are on you. But he was doing some very funny little things with his arms during the ceremony and waving. According to my 16-year-old, there was a lip-reading expert reading what he said when he was in the carriage during the procession, when he could be seen looking and shouting out of the window something, and apparently he was shouting, "Why are all you people shouting at us?" I love it. A little kid.
It's comedy gold, isn't it? Well, earlier today we asked you online, should Prince Louis be sent to the Tower for his antics? The results are in. 21.3% say yes, he's a naughty boy, whilst 78.7% say no, he's an absolute angel.
Yeah.
OK, well, indeed he is. What a sweet little chap. OK, and his sister and his brother as well. Let's now have a look at our pundits' choice now for headline heroes and back page baddies. And let me start with you, Emma. Who's been in your good books last 24 hours?
So I don't suppose I'm going to win the day on this one, but I have nominated Graham Smith of Republic. He is a person doing an important job, which is being the voice of disagreement. And you will know, Mark, sometimes you are the voice of disagreement against a majority opinion, and it's important that we have those and that they do them well and stand up for them. And there was obviously a lot of controversy. He was actually arrested, quite wrongly, in my opinion, for doing that job. And so I think, let's face it, somebody has to stand up for the Republican quarter of the country. We are not a majority. I absolutely accept that. And until we are, things won't change, and that is democratic. But somebody has to be there to represent that voice. So he is my hero of the day.
If you didn't have a monarchy, who would be a good candidate for president?
Well, I think whoever the Prime Minister is should just be in charge, basically. We don't need to have some head of state figureheads
Is that
in
right?
that way.
So you wouldn't actually appoint a president necessarily in a republic?
No, I think we'd end up with some bloody awful Britain's Got Talent type contest. It's just no.
Yeah, but the issue is if you didn't have a head of state, the Prime Minister becomes the head of state, that would be like America, and that can be quite divisive, can't it?
Because our politics is so undivisive at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't help, though, because it's really confusing for Americans because they want to love their president because the president's head of state, but then half the country hate them because it's a politician.
There are plenty of ways that we can make politics less divisive that don't involve giving somebody a big shiny hat.
All right. Well, look, Emma's solution is not to have a president or a king, but what do you think about the idea of a republic?
I don't want a republic at the moment. I'm really happy with our monarchy. I think they do a wonderful job. And actually, my front page, my hero of the week, I actually said it is King Charles. I think, not just for the last 24 hours, for the last 8 months since his mother died and the late Queen, I think he has done an amazing job leading that family through what's been a tough time, and the country, leading us all through a tough time, getting through it, and then getting ready for this joyous occasion. And then yesterday, I mean, I'm not being... It must be... He's mid-70s. He must be absolutely knackered by now after what's gone on over the last 8 months, particularly the last week running up to this. I think he's done a brilliant job and leading the family through a nation's celebration, actually. And I think just seeing your pictures on GB News and in all the newspapers, the country, in the most part, have loved it, celebrated it, brought people together, communities of different political persuasions. We've enjoyed this. We've got out there, taken our minds off some of the other crap that's out there at the moment. We've had parties. It's been fun, and we've come together as communities. It's been good.
Amen to that. Round of applause. And I do think that the Queen's funeral, the Jubilee and the coronation were all moments that did bring the nation together, our diverse nation, our whole country, wouldn't you say, Lynn?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think also people are forgetting that due to the Commonwealth and around the world, our royal family is probably the best in terms of appreciation. So I wouldn't get rid of the monarchy. I'm no, like, you know, royalist, and I don't watch everything and all the rest of it. But if we were to get, for all the people that can't stand the monarchy, abolish the monarchy, how will that improve your life if they go?
Well, I get quite a lot of my tax money back.
Will you?
Yeah.
But they cost us so little. In terms of what, it's so little, isn't it? Do you not think they actually have good value?
So there are two things that are the reasons that I am a Republican. First of all, I don't think I should be paying for very rich people's lifestyle. But more fundamentally, there is one family and one way into being the monarch, and it is to be born into that family. And that, for me, is just fundamentally wrong. You should
But that's like loads of people. Loads of people tend to have privilege across the board.
Absolutely, and I, as a socialist, I would absolutely change that. But I think that if you are going to embed that as the head of state can only be born into that family, that for me is emblematic of how wrong that is.
I don't think you would also have your taxes returned or lowered, because what would happen then, all of these royal residents and land and... we would have to pay loads of tax for the upkeep, which they very well...
But homeless people in them.
Oh, come on.
I don't think it's quite as simple as that, is it?
I'm being a bit...
Well, this debate is going to rage on, and we will have it on this show, as Emma rightly said. Lynn, your headline hero?
I'm going to go with Princess Kate.
OK. And tell me why.
I think she's regal. I think she's personable. I love the way that there was a video recently where a man brought her some flowers and she ran back to, like, have a chat with him, spoke about what he does. And earlier, someone said, I can't remember who it was, but Meghan Markle is like the Diana. I think she is more like Princess Diana in terms of how...
so dull.
I don't think she's dull at all.
Diana was never dull.
No, I love her dress sense. She's classy. She doesn't do too much. She doesn't do too little. And I think she's on the money.
All right, well, back page baddies. Emma, you've got the Met Police. I'm guessing that it's to do with the protests.
I just mentioned, but...
Overzealous, heavy-handed.
I'm going to try and make an argument that will fit better with your audience than I don't like what they did to Republic. Let's imagine next time that this is something like the COVID protests or the Countryside Alliance marching to say they'd like to return Foxhole.
Or vaccine scepticism.
What the police have done is demonstrate very, very quickly how far they're willing to abuse that new public order laws. And next time it won't be the Queen, or the King, rather. Next time it might be something that you care about.
Sobering words and hard to disagree. Neil Fox, your back page baddie, briefly, if you can.
President Biden, actually, just for not turning up, and the excuse he gave was, there's a lot going on. OK, we've all got
not in his head, there isn't.
Well, sadly, some of the worst speeches of all time. I mean, he sent his wife and his granddaughter, but no, he should have been here. It was important.
Well done. And Lynn, briefly, if you can, your back page baddie.
Mine's Trump, funny enough, because I actually quite like him. But on this occasion, and veering away from the coronation, when he was being questioned about his inappropriate conversation, locker room, there was no level of remorse, being apologetic. He was like, this is what stars do. And I was a bit disgusted.
It was sickening what he had to say. Lynn, Neil and Emma, thank you. Headliners is next. I'm back on Friday at 8. See you then.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hello, welcome back. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prince of Wales has paid a touching public tribute to his father, King Charles, saying the whole family is so proud of him. Prince William delivered his speech in front of a crowd of 20,000 people at Windsor Castle for the coronation concert. He also praised the King's decades of service, his campaigning on green issues and support for people of all backgrounds and faiths. The royal family attended en masse to see performances by Take That, Katy Perry and Lionel Richie, all of which were supported by members of the military band.
As my grandmother said when she was crowned, coronations are a declaration of our hopes for the future. And I know she's up there, fondly keeping an eye on us, and she'll be a very proud mother. Pa, we are all so proud of you.
While tens of thousands of street parties have been held across the UK, which continued yesterday's celebrations, the annual event run by Eden Project Communities said 67,000 big lunch events were planned for today. The royal family were out in force to show their thanks. Sisters Princess Beatrice and Eugenie were at an event in Buckinghamshire, and the Duke of Edinburgh, Edward, and his wife Sophie stopped by a lunch in Surrey. Well-wishers said the parties brought out the best of British.
It's lovely to see all the people and the balloons out and everything. Yeah, excellent.
It doesn't happen often enough to get people to get together, and they should. Like a day like this,
great.
It's a very nice, creative thing to bring us all together to celebrate this, because it's a one-in-a-lifetime thing. I don't think I'm going to experience it again.
We think it's wonderful. There's so many people have come to support it, and we've even got, nice fine weather after all the rain.
And what did you make of the coronation?
We loved it. We loved every minute of it, especially seeing little Louis singing the national anthem all the way through.
Yeah, I was impressed, yeah. It makes you proud to be British, doesn't it?
The US First Lady Jill Biden was one of the special guests hosted at a big lunch by the Prime Minister and his wife outside Downing Street. Recipients of the Points of Light Award, which has been given to ordinary people doing extraordinary things for their communities, were also there, as were some Ukrainian refugees and their hosts.